Every time you open Photoshop, Illustrator, or Premiere Pro, you're paying into a company that made $23.77 billion in fiscal year 2025. Months later, in March 2026, that same company agreed to a $150 million settlement for hiding cancellation fees from customers who thought they'd signed up for a simple monthly plan. As of 2026, the 6 most common Adobe apps cost $22.99 a month each if you buy them separately. That's $137.94 a month, $1,655.28 a year, just to edit photos, cut video, design a logo, and manage a PDF. For every single one of those 6 programs, a free version exists. Some of them do 80 to 95% of the same job. Some of them have been doing it for almost 3 decades, quietly, while Adobe collected a subscription for something that never had to cost anything. We're going through all 6 one Adobe program at a time, and the free tool that replaces it. No trial period, no credit card required to start, no early termination fee buried in a hyperlink. Nobody clicks. Let's get into number 6. Number 6. Adobe After Effects. After Effects calls itself the industry standard for motion graphics and compositing. That reputation is real. Studios build workflows around it. Tutorials assume you already own it. And job listings list it as a requirement before they list anything else. That reputation is also the reason Adobe can charge $22.99 a month for software that on its own does one job: animate layers and composite footage. Blender does something bigger for free. It's completely open source, and it handles modeling, animation, simulation, rendering, and compositing in one application without asking for a login or a card number first. It's not a direct one-to-one swap for After Effects 2D workflow. It's a full 3D visual effects pipeline at $0 per seat. That's exactly why independent studios have started building it into production, in projects where licensing costs used to eat the budget before a single frame got rendered. For a student learning motion design without a studio paycheck behind them, After Effects charges per seat, per month, forever, whether you finish a project that month or not. Blender charges nothing and never expires, whether you use it for 10 minutes or 10 hours. That difference is the gap between starting a career and never affording the entry ticket in the first place. One program tested here costs $22.99 a month for a job the free version does without asking for your card at all. Number 5. Adobe Acrobat. Acrobat is the one Adobe product almost everyone has used without realizing it's Adobe. Sign a lease, submit a tax form, open a scanned contract from a client. Chances are Acrobat's name showed up somewhere in that process, even if you never opened Photoshop or Illustrator in your life. That universal reach is exactly why Adobe can charge a recurring fee for a program most people only need a handful of times a year. PDF24 is free, with no subscription tier at all, not even a limited one that upsells you later. It includes more than 20 separate tools: create, merge, split, compress, convert, annotate, sign, run OCR on scanned text, redact sensitive information, and reorganize pages. There's a desktop app for Windows that processes files locally on your machine instead of uploading them to a server, which matters if the document you're editing has a client's financial details in it. No watermark ever appears on the output, and there's no daily limit on how many files you can touch. For a freelancer sending contracts every week, or a small business owner redacting a client's personal information before sharing a file, that local processing and zero cost isn't a minor convenience. It removes the 2 biggest reasons people hesitate to edit a PDF at all: cost, and where the file actually goes once you upload it. Here's the part that should annoy you the most. A PDF is the single most common document format on Earth. Locking full editing behind a paywall for a file type this basic was never a technical limitation. It was a business decision that PDF24 simply chose not to make. Number 4, replaces the app sitting between you and every photo you've posted this year. Number 4, Adobe Lightroom. Lightroom sells simplicity. Import your raw files, apply a preset, sync across every device you own. Done. That simplicity is real, and for a lot of photographers, it's worth paying for. It's also priced at $22.99 a month, on top of whatever else you're already paying Adobe for, stacking quietly on top of Photoshop and Premiere if you're already subscribed to those. Darktable does the same non-destructive raw editing for free, with a different philosophy underneath it. Instead of Lightroom's simplified sliders, it exposes a full pixel pipeline, letting you stack individual processing modules for exposure, color, and lens correction in whatever order actually fixes your image. That's a level of technical precision. Lightroom hides by design to keep the interface approachable. Darktable also supports LUA scripting for automation. Lightroom doesn't offer at any price tier. This isn't a worse tool sold at a lower price. It's a steeper learning curve traded for zero cost, forever. For a wedding photographer editing thousands of raw files after every shoot, or a hobbyist shooting every weekend on a fixed budget, that difference adds up to real money staying in your account instead of disappearing into Adobe's $23.77 billion a year in revenue, one $22.99 charge at a time. Number 3 is the program that costs you money every single time you save a logo file. Number 3, Adobe Illustrator. Illustrator's native file format is proprietary, built specifically to keep your work inside Adobe's ecosystem rather than moving freely between tools. When you export a logo to SVG for a website or an app icon, Illustrator often adds Adobe-specific code riding along in the file, code most browsers still have to interpret around instead of reading directly. Inkscape was built the opposite way, from the ground up. SVG isn't an export option buried in a menu. It's the native format built directly around the open web standard that browsers were designed to read. The code it produces straight out of the file is typically cleaner, lighter, and more standards compliant, with none of the proprietary extras a paying customer never asked Adobe to include. For a small business owner designing their own logo, or a web designer exporting icons for a production site, that difference matters more than it sounds like it should. A bloated SVG file loads slower and can break on unexpected browsers or devices. Inkscape produces the exact file format the web actually runs on for free, without translating it through a paid intermediary first. Illustrator remains the industry's reflex habit, the tool people reach for because everyone else does. Inkscape is often the tool that actually finishes the job the way the web needs it finished. Number 2 replaces the single most expensive habit in independent filmmaking, and the free version might genuinely be better. Number 2, Adobe Premiere Pro. Premiere Pro is the default answer for video editing because it's the app most tutorials assume you already own before you even open them. At $22.99 a month, with no permanent free tier, it's a recurring cost with no ceiling and no natural stopping point. According to the FTC's complaint, canceling within the first year, after a short grace period, triggered an early termination fee equal to 50% of your remaining annual payments, sometimes amounting to hundreds of dollars charged in a single lump sum. That fee sat buried in fine print and inconspicuous hyperlinks most subscribers never clicked. It was one of the specific practices named in Adobe's March 2026 settlement, which commits the company to simplify its disclosures and its cancellation process going forward. DaVinci Resolve's free version isn't a limited demo designed to push you toward a paid upgrade. It's a full non-linear editor with multi-layer timelines, transitions, and effects comparable to Premiere Pro's core toolkit. It also includes Hollywood-grade node-based color grading, integrated Fairlight audio tools, and built-in Fusion visual effects, all inside the same free application with no watermark stamped across your export. For an independent filmmaker or a YouTuber building a channel on a tight budget, that combination removes an entire category of plugin purchases people assume they need just to color grade footage properly. Premiere Pro's subscription is legitimate software. DaVinci Resolve's free tier is also legitimate software. One of them billed customers for years under terms federal regulators, later called deceptive. The other one asked for nothing and still shipped tools Premiere users pay extra for. Number 1 is the program most people think of first when they hear the word Adobe. Its free replacement is older than most of the people using it. Number 1, Adobe Photoshop. Photoshop has been the default word for photo editing since 1990. That's not marketing. That's more than 3 decades of habit built into an entire industry's vocabulary, to the point where photoshopped became a verb people use for image editing in general. That habit is exactly why Adobe can charge $22.99 a month for it without most users ever comparing it to anything else, or even knowing there's anything else to compare it to. GIMP has been running the counter-argument since 1995. 2 developers at UC Berkeley, Spencer Kimball and Peter Mattis, built it as a free open-source image editor, the tool that would go on to become the standing free alternative to Photoshop. It launched its first public version in early 1996, back when most current Photoshop subscribers weren't old enough to open a computer on their own. It's been free, open source, and actively updated for almost 30 years since, with layers, selection tools, filters, color correction, and batch processing all present, all free, on Windows, macOS, and Linux, with no version locked behind a higher tier. For a small business owner editing product photos for an online store, or a student learning design without institutional software access, that 30-year head start on being free isn't a footnote. It's the entire reason some careers in design were even possible to start. Here's the number that should bother you more than any single feature comparison. Adobe closed fiscal year 2025 with $23.77 billion in revenue. Months later, in March 2026, it agreed to pay $150 million after federal investigators found it had been hiding cancellation fees from customers running on autopilot billing they never fully understood. A cleaner disclosure process. An actual permanent free tier. A subscription you can leave without a penalty attached. None of that was ever a financial constraint at that scale. It was a margin decision, made deliberately, year after year. GIMP has offered the free tier Adobe never had to build for almost 30 years, without a federal settlement forcing it to. One rule removes most of this problem before it starts. Before you subscribe to anything with Adobe in the name, search for the free alternative first and give it one real project before you give Adobe your card. Not 5 minutes of poking around, one full project, start to finish, the same way you'd actually use the paid version. To be fair, Adobe's Creative Cloud All Apps bundle costs less than buying 6 single apps separately at full price. It's still a recurring subscription for a set of tools that, individually, already have free replacements, doing most of the job for nothing. Bundling a high price into a smaller high price is still a high price, just one that feels like a discount. Watch for one signal in particular before you sign up for anything: a checkout screen with an annual plan pre-selected and billed monthly by default, with the total commitment buried below the fold. That exact pattern was named directly in Adobe's 2026 settlement. Check whether it's still there before you enter a card number. You don't need 6 subscriptions to make something good. You need the right free tool and one finished project to prove it works. Send this to the one person you know who's still paying $137.94 a month for 6 apps they use twice a week.